in Ottawa. Tonight, the final official count is done. It is a minority government for Mark Carney.
No matter where you live, no matter what language you speak, no matter how you voted, I will always do my best to represent everyone who calls Canada home.
Prime Minister Carney re-elected with a minority government that is just a few seats, in fact 3 seats, shy of a majority after all those final votes are counted. Pierre Poilievre and Jagmeet Singh, on the other hand, both lose their seats.
It will be an honor to continue to fight for you.
I'll be stepping down as party leader as soon as an interim leader can be appointed.
We've got a full election debrief for you, starting with Bruce Fanjoy, the incoming Liberal MP who unseated Pierre Poilievre in that stunner, and one of only 7 NDP MPs left standing, Don Davies, on the future of his party without official standing in the House of Commons. Plus, the job ahead.
I'm going to hold his feet to the fire. We're going to work well together.
Whether or not he, as a leader, is going to be able to change course remains to be seen.
I would say that this is an opportunity for each and all of us to hit the reset button.
We're going to bring in our front bench with Brian Gallant, Lisa Ray, Tom Mulcair, and Rob Benzie on how the results of this election will shape the political year ahead. That's coming up in just a bit tonight. First, though.
We are all Canadian, and my government will work for and with everyone. I began with humility, but Canadians are ambitious. And now, more than ever, it is a time for ambition. It is a time to be bold, to meet this crisis with overwhelming positive force of a united Canada. Because we are going to build, baby, build.
Mark Carney celebrating his win. We can now officially say just 3 seats short of a majority. The Liberals end up with 169 seats out of 343 in the House of Commons. The Conservatives are up to 144. The Bloc Québécois reduced to 22 seats. The NDP, as I mentioned, losing official party status in the House of Commons, settling in at just 7 seats. The Greens, only Elizabeth May was elected. And just moments ago delivered into our inbox, I do want to share with you a readout from the Prime Minister's office about a call that occurred today with the President of the United States, Donald Trump. President Trump, the readout says, congratulated Prime Minister Carney on his recent election. The leaders agreed on the importance of Canada and the United States working together as independent sovereign nations for their mutual betterment. To that end, the leaders agreed to meet in person in the near future. We are certainly efforting to find out just how near that meeting might be. But I think the key phrase out of that readout is certainly around a recognition. The leaders agreed to work together as independent sovereign nations. That, of course, in reference to the constant threats from Donald Trump as recently as Election Day to make us the 51st state. Some controversy toward the end of the election campaign around Mark Carney's, Prime Minister Carney's original description of their call and sovereignty and the degree to which President Trump respected it. But in this readout, the Prime Minister says that they both acknowledged they would work together as independent sovereign nations. And once again, we'll try and find out exactly when that meeting is set to take place. The results that I just mentioned, the seat standings rather, also led to Jagmeet Singh's resignation. Take a listen.
Almost 8 years ago, I was elected the leader of this incredible party, this incredible movement. I've worked really hard to be worthy of this trust, to live up to the legacy of our movement. Hold on a sec, I guess. Tonight, I've been informed our party leader that I'll be stepping down as party leader as soon as an interim leader can be appointed.
Now, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was able to increase his party seat count and popular vote pretty substantially, but, and it's a big but, he lost his seat in the early hours of this morning, one he's held for 2 decades. He hasn't spoken since, but he did address his election night crowd after Carney's minority was confirmed, pledging to stay on as leader. Take a listen.
To the millions of people who voted for the Conservative Party and put their hopes and dreams in our vision, thank you. It will be an honor to continue to fight for you and to be a champion of your cause as we go forward. Every single day, our Conservative caucus and I will be holding the government to account on behalf of the millions of Canadians who believed in the message of change.
The person to unseat him is Liberal Bruce Fanjoy, who is with me now. Mr. Fanjoy, good to meet you and good to have you here in studio.
Well, thank you. It's lovely to be here, Vashi.
I appreciate you making the time. Congratulations.
Thank you.
First of all, there were all these reports, or a few of them at least, in the days leading up to the election that what did happen could happen. The Conservatives were denying it. It was hard to believe, I can say, even for myself, because I know Mr. Poilievre's record there for 2 decades. Were you at all surprised, or did you see this coming in those last few days?
I wasn't surprised. I've been knocking on doors for over 2 years and had thousands of conversations with voters in Carleton, so I knew for a long time that we were competitive, you know, we just, as it kept getting closer, and we had a magnificent team of volunteers that were working on the campaign as well, I knew we were right there, and I knew it was going to be close on election night.
Was there any disbelief when it was finally pronounced in the wee hours of this morning? Like, was it surreal in any way, or along your?
You know, I think we focused on the process all along. What do we need to do today to move this campaign forward? And we did that day after day, and in the belief that if we do things right every day, the numbers will take care of themselves. So I will say that when the first numbers came in, I thought it was a big rush, but they kept coming in positive for us all evening long, and it was I wouldn't say it was unexpected, but it was. I felt we had a plan that was clearly working.
I've been inundated with emails from people who either live in the riding or near the riding with their kind of theorizing about what contributed to this, and particularly along demographic lines. For example, boundary changes, additional public servants, that moving in, that kind of thing. Do you have a sense at all?
You know, I think it's mostly Donald Trump and the tariffs and the people of Carleton realizing that Canada was facing a very unique moment that required serious leadership, and they have had a uniquely qualified leader of the Liberal Party in Mark Carney, and with our campaign, we were working really hard to meet voters. We were all over the riding every day, and whereas Pierre's campaign didn't even really seem to get going until the last week. I was surprised about that. Obviously, you know, as the city pushed out a bit, there's been big growth in Stittsville and Riverside South and Manotick and Richmond. A lot of our more suburban communities. But I think this was all about Canada, and so we made great advances in the rural parts of the riding as well.
Did you feel, if your sense was it was about Trump and the threat he posed and Mark Carney's leadership, did you find, because you said you were knocking on doors for 2 years, did you find a shift since Trump kind of came on scene, since Prime Minister Carney came on scene? Yes, yeah,
I'll confess, there were times earlier in this campaign, before the formal writ, in fact before the change in leadership, when it felt like I had the wind in my face. I was still getting very good response at the doors, but the Liberal Party was out of favor at that time. But that changed in January, as everyone knows now, and with Mark Carney's leadership, suddenly I had the wind at my back, and you know, we could see that in all the communities in the riding. We just kept working, and you know, Pierre God bless him. He took the riding for granted, and people don't like to be taken for granted. So I think that opened the door for people to consider a change in Carleton.
Has he spoken to you or called you at all with any words of?
I haven't heard from Mr. Poilievre. I don't know if I will, but I do wish them the best.
Obviously, it will be a decision for the Conservative Party and Conservative members, but I'm sure you'll understand, as someone who is now actively part of politics but who follows politics, that the conversation around his leadership shifted with the outcome in your riding, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it seemed understandable with the case that he made last night, with an increase, significant increase in seats, and particularly the popular vote,
Mm-hmm.
that he could, convince his caucus, convince members that he deserved to stay in that position. He now doesn't hold a seat, which is pretty consequential for the leader of the opposition, where they live, if they're
Mm-hmm.
able to serve, in what capacity. Do you think he can stay on in that role, given what happened with you?
Mm-hmm. That's a decision for the Conservative Party to make. I'm certain they won't consult me.
No view on it, though?
Pardon me?
No view on it?
No, my view is I can't wait to get to work for the people of Carleton. I'm going to be traveling to all communities in the riding. I want to make sure that Canadians in Carleton are able to benefit from programs like the Canadian Dental Care Program, which unfortunately Pierre never promoted in Carleton, because it wasn't his program. He didn't believe in it the same way that the Liberal Party did. So there are people in Carleton who could benefit from this program and aren't. So I'm going to get right down to work and try to make life more affordable for people in Carleton.
Yeah, he certainly wasn't convinced of its effectiveness when you're referencing the dental program. I guess I'll jump off that and just to ask you a final question. He does have a base of support in that riding.
Of course,
obviously, one of my colleagues was out there today. A lot of people who are quite shocked and to a degree devastated. I think you can extrapolate that to other parts of the country, mm-hmm. where you see such a small amount of division between the popular vote, between your party mm-hmm. and the Conservatives. How mm-hmm. mindful are you of that, and how do you hope your party addresses it?
I'm very mindful. I will be working hard for every resident of Carleton. I'll be meeting with them, listening to them, advocating for them, and I think that even people who did not vote for me last night will come to find that I'm a very strong MP for the riding, for them and their families. Service has been a constant in my life, and that's not about to change.
I'll leave it on that note. Mr. Fanjoy, thanks so much, and congratulations once again.
Thank you, Vasi.
That is Bruce Fanjoy, the incoming Liberal MP in the riding that Pierre Poilievre has held for 20 years. He, of course, unseated Poilievre. We'll talk about that in a little bit with our front bench. Right now, though, I want to turn to the NDP. They're looking at a starkly reduced caucus. Parties need at least 12 MPs for official party status in the House of Commons. They went into the election. The party did with 24 seats. They've lost 17, reducing caucus to just 7 members. One of those, however, is Don Davies. The final count for his BC riding of Vancouver Kingsway concluded just this afternoon. We were glued to the computer as that was happening, as I'm sure you were, Mr. Davies. Thanks so much for making the time and joining us this evening.
Great to be with you, Vashi.
This afternoon, I guess, where you are. I wanted to just start off and get your reaction to how much of a nail-biter your own race was, and how concerned you were that it could have gone the other way.
Well, at the final conclusion, it was 310 votes. And in fact, we were leading by 300 last night, but we had to wait until the special ballots were counted today. Those are the ballots where people can walk into a returning office anywhere across the country and vote for Vancouver Kingsway. So I just found out for sure about 45 minutes ago that the results are official. So it was a long night, it was a long day, but we're feeling quite relieved and grateful to the people of Vancouver Kingsway.
How are you feeling about the broader picture and what I spelled out in the introduction that, of course, informed Mr. Singh's decision to announce his resignation last night? This is, and I don't mean this with any disrespect, but like the worst showing of your party historically. How are you reflecting on that this evening?
Well, I have a range of emotions. You know, I have gratitude, I've got sadness, and I have hope for the future. You know, I guess I'm grateful for Jagmeet Singh's leadership. He led with courage, he led with heart, he led with principle. I mean, because of him and his leadership, millions of Canadians will have access to dental care and prescription medications. You know, workers get 10 paid sick days. We have a school nutrition program. His leadership and our caucus last Parliament made a real difference. I'm sad, of course, because we lost some excellent parliamentarians and our seat count is down. It was not the result that we wanted, but I'm hopeful because this doesn't define our future. You know, we're going to do a root and branch analysis of what happened and why, and then we'll start the process of rebuilding, because I do think that the values that the New Democrats have been championing are still values that really resonate with the majority of Canadians. I think we had a very unique election with Mr. Trump. And, you know, I think a lot of New Democrats voted out of fear of Mr. Trump as opposed to a rejection of our values. So it's a sobering day, but the rebuilding starts tomorrow.
I think it's totally fair to acknowledge the impact that Donald Trump had on a number of Canadians who ultimately were very focused on the idea of who forms government. But does your party not need to take a harder look at, you know, for example, going into that agreement, its own record on that agreement, kind of its own conduct, the leadership even of Mr. Singh, in order to really identify what went wrong in order to fix it? Like, do you not need to take a little bit more responsibility for leading yourselves down the path you've gone down?
Yeah, I think it's a fair comment, Vashi. I mean, we'll have to have a really honest appraisal and a realistic assessment of the positives that we accomplished, but also, you know, where we can improve. And of course, we're in a minority parliament, it looks like again. And it looks again like the New Democrats, you know, reduced as we are, may hold the balance of power again. So I think there are important lessons to learn from the last parliament about working together and how we can advance the policies that the majority of working Canadians want, but also be politically savvy and turn that into electoral gains. So I look forward to meeting with my colleagues in the days and weeks ahead as we work together on that. But it does start with an honest assessment, and it starts with, you know, reimagining a better political offer for the future.
Just a quick question on sort of, I guess, what it looks like if you do end up, I mean, you do have enough seats to hold the balance of power. What do you envision that as looking like? And have you ruled out, for example, the kind of formal agreement that your party was in with the Liberals for 2 years?
Well, it's far too premature to rule in or rule out anything. I mean, you know, we're just right now, we're just dealing with the results of the election. I expect our colleagues will meet in the next few days. We'll have to pick an interim leader, and then we'll have to begin the process of scheduling and organizing a leadership contest. In the meantime, you know, there's all sorts of issues. You know, everything's negotiable in politics. And one of the things that I'm already thinking about is official party status. That number is arbitrary of 12. I know in BC last legislative session, the Greens secured official party status with, I think, 3 MLAs. And I think that's important because the NDP voice in Parliament is critical. When you have official party status, you get question period time, you get a seat at committee tables, and you also get some resources, research and communications and legislative. So, you know, I look forward to meeting with my colleagues and coming out with a proposal that we can bring to Parliament whenever it starts sitting. And we've ruled nothing out at this time. What we are going to do is keep the interests of working Canadians and the vast majority of people who want affordable housing and want strong public health care and want a good deal for workers, want better foreign policy, want climate action, Indigenous justice, all of the issues that progressives care about in this country. We'll be there to champion them in this Parliament as strongly as we ever have.
Doesn't official party status, though, have to be earned? And didn't your party not earn it?
Well, it's in the standing orders. It's not a legislated number, Vashi. It's something that's fluid and it's arbitrary. Like I said, I think it depends on the moment. I mean, one thing, as I've said, is Liberals don't have a majority. They're going to need the support of other parties. And when that happens, when you don't have a majority, they're compelled to sit down with other parties and start negotiating. So, you know, this is something I think is important. And I look forward to talking with my NDP colleagues on putting forth a sound proposal to the Liberals. And like I said before, I've seen official party status in legislatures and parliaments with as few as 3 people in this country. So we'll be talking and it'll be exciting times in the days and weeks ahead.
Just really quickly, if I understand that correctly, does that mean that basically you could use something like official party status as a bargaining chip in exchange for support on the entire government agenda, or just a piece of it?
Oh, I'm not saying anything like that. I mean, there's no agenda even constructed at this point. All I'm saying is that the NDP caucus is important. We might be 7, and we're going to be fighting for every conceivable parliamentary asset that we can to make sure that the voice of the million Canadians that voted for us is expressed in Parliament. And, you know, I'm just saying that in a minority parliament, governments have to listen in a way that they don't in a majority parliament. And so that I think that opens opportunities for us to make sure that the NDP voice and the voice of all those who believe in our values are expressed and heard this Parliament.
Pardon me, will the interim leader be selected from caucus, and would you consider running for the position?
It remains to be seen, Vashi. Our federal council, in consultation with caucus, chooses the interim leader. I don't think it has to be within caucus constitutionally, but I think it's obviously an asset if they are. And, you know, it's something that I would consider. And we've got a lot of great colleagues in our caucus who would be wonderful in that position. So I look forward. We haven't had a chance even to talk yet. So I look forward to chatting with my other 6 colleagues, and we'll be working solidly together as New Democrats do to make sure that we advocate the best possible social democratic progressive position we can in Parliament. And so we'll see what happens in the days ahead.
I'll leave it there. Thanks for making the time for the conversation, Mr. Davies, and congratulations on your win.
Thank you, Vashi.
British Columbia NDP MP Don Davies there. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We've got more Power Play ahead. A lot to analyze from what you just heard, and of course the prospect of Pierre Poilievre staying on as party leader despite losing his seat. Our front bench, Brian Gallant, Tom Mulcair, Lisa Raitt, and Rob Benzie. There they are. They're with me in just 2 minutes.
Feel wonderful, very humbled, as I said in my remarks, by the confidence that Canadians placed in myself and the party, and very dedicated focus to an ambitious outcome for this great country. But I'm very, very, very grateful. It's a tremendous honor. Every vote is a privilege, and we have a great group of MPs coming. We have a commitment to work for our great country, and we will get to it right away. Thank you very much.
That's Prime Minister Mark Carney last night speaking to CTV News following his federal election win. Carney secured a minority government for himself and the party. Here's how the seats break down. The Liberals are set with 169 of 343 seats. The Conservatives have 144. The Bloc dropped to 23 seats, the NDP at 7, and they no longer, as a result, have official party status. The Green Party, with Elizabeth May, secures 1 seat. As for the popular vote, it was incredibly close, just 2% dividing the parties. Liberals with 43.5% of the vote, followed closely by the Tories at 41.4%. The Liberals are 3 seats, as you can see from those calculations, shy of the majority marker at 172 seats. So they're going to need to secure support from opposition MPs to help with their agenda. Bloc leader Yves-François Blanchet, whose party lost a dozen seats, was asked about this possibility today. He said he's ready to come to a temporary, quote, truce with the Liberals.
Kind of a truce in which the Liberals would refrain from being offensive about language and security of the state and immigration and oil. Looking at what we have in common and working on that, basically. The last thing the Quebec people and Canada people want is instability in the federal parliament.
While on one hand, we're looking at what happens in Parliament, on the other, we're looking at what happens to leaders of various parties, including Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre. He made big gains for the party's popular vote as well as their seat count, but he lost his own seat. Does he stay on as leader? What are the prospects of that? We have a lot to talk about with our front bench. Former New Brunswick Liberal Premier Brian Gallant is with us. He's the CEO of Space Canada now. Former Conservative Deputy Leader Lisa Raitt is here. She's the Vice Chair and Managing Director of Global Investment Banking at CIBC. CTV News political analyst and former leader of the federal NDP, Tom Mulcair, is here, as is the Toronto Star's Queen's Park Bureau Chief, Rob Benzie. Hi, everybody. Very nice to see you. Just a short few hours since I feel like I saw all of you. Anyway, I can barely get any words out. Brian, I'll start with you. I got to start on the story of Poilievre because I think 24 hours ago or whatever, 16 hours ago, we would have been having a different conversation. He did increase the share of the vote substantially, the number of seats. By many accounts, if you take out the expectations last year, it is a success for the party. But you have to take into account those expectations, the fact they lost, and then his own seat. Like, what does that do to your calculation of whether he can stay or go?
Everything you laid out is very important and try to calculate what's going to happen. I would only add the history of the last two leaders after they were unsuccessful at forming government, and clearly the Conservatives had very little patience for the last two leaders. Obviously, different set of circumstances, different types of leaders, different approaches, not necessarily meaning that's a pro or a con, but doesn't necessarily mean that that's exactly what would happen in this case. But your point, I think, is very good. He has such great things to point to that in isolation would make a lot of sense to give him another shot. Basically, look at the vote percentage, look at the way in which we have been able to deliver seats, look at the way in which we were able to keep this government to a minority, all these kind of things that typically would work. But expectations will drive some emotions for some. And of course, the idea that people will have maybe their own ambitions, their own views, how Poilievre was as a leader and how his team was. But to me, the most important one is the fact that he doesn't have a seat. I think if he had a seat, it would make it a lot easier, practically speaking, to be able to make the arguments that we went through. And I think there would probably be more flexibility and patience. Without having a seat, practically speaking, it makes it a lot more difficult, in my opinion.
Lisa, how much harder do you think it makes it? And what other factors will you be kind of taking into account when trying to figure out whether he stays or goes?
Well, it just feels like he's got one hand tied behind his back as he's going to try to lead the opposition in opposing this government. And it just, the optics aren't good in terms of how he's going to be able to position and fight it. Who is going to speak for the official opposition in the House of Commons? Because somebody's going to have to stand up and do the questions during question period, and they're going to have to represent. And the, you know, the stylization of the title is now just going to be the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. He's no longer the leader of the official opposition because he can't be, because he doesn't have a seat. All of these things are really difficult in terms of narrative and framing. I don't know whether or not people have landed on the calculus of how much Pierre was responsible for the big movement in the numbers and the seats. I think people are thinking through that. And as that kind of ruminates and settles, then we'll see whether people are going to be taking a point of view as to whether or not he gets to have a chance. There are two places where he's going to have to get the confidence of his people, and one is in caucus, and the other one is at the National Convention, where we do a leadership review after the loss of an election. So he's going to have to face caucus. He's going to have to face membership. Those are not easy hills to climb, and we'll see where that goes. But Vashi, one thing about Mr. Blanchette and the clip package that you showed, I thought it was really interesting that he warned the Liberals to not get offensive on oil. What the heck does that mean?
I thought that would jump out. I promise we're going to talk about that in a second, because that does make for some interesting discussions about what happens next in Parliament and who the dance partners are. Tom, I wanted to get your take as someone who has made the decision about, you know, timing and when to step away. We were together in studio last night on whether or not you think Poilievre will continue to try and hang on, or if you ultimately think that the loss of the seat will be a deciding factor for him.
It'll be a decisive factor, but I don't know if it'll be the deciding factor. I think that Poilievre has shown an ability that if he'd had another week or two, might have seen the lines on those graphs cross. You know, he was 4, 5, 6 points, most polling, 7 points behind 2 weeks out. And that kept narrowing, and that's what the pollsters kept telling us. And last night, they were within hailing distance of the overall vote count of the Liberals, 2 percentage points apart. What the Conservatives under Poilievre pulled off in that southwestern part of Ontario that includes places like Windsor was absolutely masterful. It was largely done. Nobody saw it coming. It was a sweep. It was a blue wall. And what was most interesting for me as a former leader of the NDP, who worked very closely with union leaders and depended on them a lot, is the union leaders were once again telling the NDP that the NDP had their support, but the workers were deciding something completely different. They were so worried about Trump. They were so worried about their jobs. They were listening to the pitch that Pierre Poilievre was making. And that's one of the reasons why I think you might have every ability to get through this. It's true that whether it was Andrew Scheer or Aaron O'Toole, they weren't able to hold on. But if you look at the numbers here, you have to go all the way back to the Mulroney year to see a number like that for the Conservatives across Canada. Are there things that Poilievre has to change? There are parts of his approach, his personality, keeping journalists off the plane is just a way of talking about his inability to deal with the normal rules of the game. He wants to upset those rules. He thinks he can upend them. He wants to continue. I don't think he's not going to have any trouble finding a good Conservative MP with an ultra-safe riding, preferably within Ottawa, who will give up their seat in return for something else that they can offer him. And Mr. Poilievre would be able to get re-elected in the House, because there's no small irony in the fact that the best debater of his generation is now deprived of his voice in the House of Commons.
Yeah, this, I think Tom makes a point about like how caucus will essentially, or even the membership kind of view Mr. Poilievre and the degree to which that will ultimately determine whether he stays or goes, because it has been determinative in the past 2 instances with Aaron O'Toole and Andrew Scheer. I remember it, I'm sure vividly like you do, Benzie, right? Yeah. Particularly initially in the case of Andrew Scheer, where there were people who were going on TV to say that he should step down. Like, it was a slow burn, but it was a public one. And then it sort of factions of the party turned on Mr. O'Toole for his pivot to the center during the campaign. I don't necessarily get the sense like that he's lost a lot of support in that way, but I do think there were some concerns from Conservatives about, you know, in his caucus about the way that the campaign was run and the degree to which they're not allowed to say anything. And I wonder if that maybe becomes part of the conversation too.
I think it does, Vashti. Tories are very good at regicide, and the thing that the problem I think Mr. Poilievre has is when things started to go better for them in their polling, when he wasn't in their ads, when they did the golf ad and the seniors ad, he wasn't front and center in their advertising in the last weeks. Why? Because he was a problem. Lisa made news in this very panel a couple of weeks ago when she admitted that at the doors people were saying that they liked the Conservative program, they just didn't really like the leader. They would have preferred to have Mark Carney deliver that program. And I think that was a very astute observation, because I think Poilievre is going to try to hang on. I'm not so 100% sure that he will be able to hang on. I think that if I'm Mark Carney has 169 seats. He beat Poilievre by 25 seats. Yes, they only won by two percentage points higher in popular vote. And yes, Ontario was not as good for the Liberals as it had been in the past. But you don't think that Mr. Carney could convince 1 or 2 Tories to maybe cross the floor? You don't think that Carney could neutralize the New Democrats for a little while? I mean, there are lots of moving parts here, and Mr. Poilievre is wounded. He's may not be mortally wounded, but he lost his seat. And we have the same thing here in Ontario. Bonnie Crombie, the Liberal leader, she did better for her party, but she didn't win, and she lost her seat. She's hanging on for now. But John Tory, who I was speaking to this morning, used to be the mayor of Toronto. Before that, he was the Progressive Conservative leader. He lost his seat in the 2007 election and hung on and tried to win a by-election, then finally resigned after losing a by-election that he engineered in, getting a caucus member to quit. I mean, I think Tom makes a good point. There are a lot of opportunities and options for Mr. Poilievre to find a safe riding in a by-election. But he is wounded. Let's not kid ourselves. This is a guy who was ahead by 25 percentage points on New Year's Day. And when we all talked in the new year, we were talking about how many seats the Conservative majority would be, not whether he would win his seat.
Yeah.
And I guess your reporting on that rotting, Benzie, was not made up as so many accused, eh? Right? Yeah, you were right on the money.
Thank you. Well, thanks, Vashi. Yeah. When we broke that story, they were like saying it was mischief. Sorry, it wasn't. It was the fact.
I said that. Yeah, I said that.
Well, it's good that we can come to agreement tonight.
No one wanted to call you out, Lisa.
Yeah, no. I'm going to press pause for a moment. Our front bench is sticking around on a very different and more serious note. We are getting an update out of Vancouver on the horrifying tragedy that took place over the weekend, the mass murder there at a Filipino street festival. There's some updates, I believe, on the victims coming from police. So we're just going to play some of that for you. Let's take a listen in.
Provide a little bit of clarification on something I told you about yesterday. Of the 11 murder victims, I told you yesterday that 9 were women and 2 were men. Slight clarification there. 8 are women, 1 is a 5-year-old girl, and 2 are men. The medical status of the surviving victims who were in hospital remains unchanged. 7 people remain in critical condition. 3 people remain in serious condition. Of the 7 people in critical condition, 2 are women, 5 are men, and they range in age from 29 to 66. The youngest and the oldest both being men. Of the patients in hospital who are in serious condition, they are all male, and they range in age from 22 months to 60 years old. We are working to confirm the nationalities of all victims, homicide victims and surviving victims. I told you yesterday of the 11 homicide victims, we'd confirmed that 10 of them were Metro Vancouver residents. We are still doing extra work to confirm their nationalities. We're working with partners, particularly at Global Affairs Canada, to do so.
An update there from Vancouver police on the mass murder that took place over the weekend at a Filipino street festival. 11 people, as you heard there, were murdered. He spoke a little bit about the victims who are in hospital. 7 of them remain in critical condition. 3 of them are in serious condition. We're going to have more updates on that throughout the evening as police provide some more details, and we'll share them with you as soon as they come into our newsroom. I'm going to take a quick commercial break. Our program Power Play is back after that break.
Last night, an MP in the Durham region that you know quite well said that you were a hype man for the Liberals and that you sabotaged the campaign for the Conservatives.
Well, you know something, I'm focusing on unity right across this country. We have to bring this country together like we've never have before. Each other are not the enemies. There's one person that's causing a real problem, not just here around the world, and that's President Trump.
That is Ontario Premier Doug Ford responding to some comments from a federal Conservative MP who was re-elected. His name is Jamil Javani. He spoke to my colleague David Common over at the CBC during the election, during election night broadcast, and took a lot of shots at Premier Ford, laying a lot of the blame for the outcome for the Conservatives at the feet of the Premier. I'm here with the front bench, Brian Glant, Lisa Raitt, Tom Mulcair, and Rob Benzie to talk a little bit more about premiers across the country and the reaction to all of this as it unfolds. Benzie, I'll start with you. On this point specifically, Corey Tonight, obviously a big part of this story, the comments he said on the podcast, on this show throughout. What do you make of the sort of back and forth between these two camps, and what impact do you think it ultimately had, if any?
I think it was debilitating for sure, but I don't think it was necessarily Mr. Ford's fault. I mean, remember, Pierre Poilievre had been the leader for 2.5 years before he picked up the phone to call Doug Ford the most powerful conservative politician in Canada, and that was on March 17th that they first spoke. So basically a week before Mr. Carney triggered the election, Mr. Poilievre felt he had to reach out. And then Mr. Poilievre mischaracterized the call when we reported that it was basically a cry for help, which it was. He was like saying, oh no, it was just a friendly call, and like I often talk to premiers. So he was wrong then. And anyway, it's fine. I'm not bitter that he was disputing my story, but I was right and he was wrong. But just like Lisa, no. But I think that it is a problem for that party. They need to make peace. The Progressive Conservatives in Ontario are a very important part of that coalition, and I don't really understand why the federal Conservatives feel they can get around them. They didn't want. They did a lot of. There were a lot of shenanigans between the two parties, and then Jamil Jivani's comments last night to CBC about Mr. Ford, and he saying that he sabotaged the election and that he was carrying water for the Liberals and he was too busy having lattes with Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland. That's really quite something. Now, Ford, to his credit, kept the temperature low today. I thought he might bust a gasket. Because it's no secret, Mr. Ford wanted Mr. Carney to win the election. They kept in constant contact throughout the campaign. Mr. Carney came to visit Mr. Ford in Etobicoke before the election, and they sat and posed for pictures while having green tea at Wally's Grill in Rexdale. I mean, you know, it was obvious, even though Ford said he was being agnostic, that he wasn't. He wanted the Liberals to win, and it's probably because it's good politically for him if the Liberals do win.
Well, I thought also Corey made a good point. I'm wondering what you think about this, Tom, that, you know, there are sort of different versions of the Conservative Party in different parts of the country. And in particular, if you look at Conservatives in Alberta and Saskatchewan, they wouldn't necessarily align with the kind of principles that Premier Ford puts forward. That doesn't necessarily make it right or wrong, but it's difficult to bridge the gap. And Pierre Poilievre isn't the only Conservative leader that has been sort of greeted with that challenge.
Yeah, but the bull in the china shop approach, we are told, of Jenny Byrne, for example, with regard to Tim Houston and his folks in Nova Scotia, leaves bad memories. She is reported to have basically said, well, you know, they won't forget the behavior of the Houston government with them. So this is the old battle, you know, two different parties in the bosom of a single group, which is, of course, the Progressive Conservatives, represented by people like Tim Houston and Doug Ford, and the hard-bitten Conservatives of Pierre Poilievre. And just so nobody thinks that it's only the Conservatives that are having this sort of fight, soul-searching, I guess would be a nicer way to say it. Today, the head of the Parti Québécois, the Quebec branch of the Separatists, did a full-throated attack on Yves-François Blanchet for his feeble campaign, where he did not talk enough about separation. There you go.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Mr. Blanchet, because I did want to circle back, Lisa, to the comment he made about a truce with Mark Carney, the degree to which he is saying he's going to cooperate, and the things that he wanted Mark Carney to stay away from, as you know, characterizing essentially as agitators with Quebec, and he said oil. I bring that up not just in the sort of relationship with Quebec, but comments last night from Mark Carney, from Prime Minister Carney, about Alberta and Saskatchewan, the representation of the Conservative vote there, reaching out, you know, promises made during the campaign about building out the capacity to export natural resources. Like, all of that will come to a head very quickly, it feels.
Well, it's not a healthy thing to have the leader of the bloc trying to tell another province what it is that is going to be spoken about with the prime minister. I mean, that's beyond the pale. That's pretty much swinging for the fences. The election is over. He doesn't need to impress people anymore. He's got the seats that he has. And now it's just figuring out whether or not he's going to be a dance partner for the Liberals. But if the Liberals pick him now, and after what he said about oil, I mean, I think the Conservatives have a valid gripe, because they're going to be partnering up with a party that has clearly said that one of the offensive things to them is oil in this country. And we heard a lot in this election about the importance of pipelines, the importance of getting our natural resources to Tidewater. So I see Tom is shaking his head. I don't know if he's agreeing or disagreeing with me, but we'll see.
You go ahead, Tom, and then I'll get Brian in.
I don't think there's any risk whatsoever that Mr. Carney is going to partner up with the Bloc Québécois. I mean, the seats even finished of the NDP are more than enough, and it would be absolutely toxic for the very reason that Lisa is giving.
Yeah.
So let me ask you then, Brian, from a sort of broader perspective about how this might work. 169 is where we ended up today. That is just 3 seats short of a majority. Tom is right. You know, Prime Minister Carney can peel from the NDP very quickly. He can peel from the Bloc, or if it's about pipelines, maybe even the Conservatives. How stable a minority do you think this will be?
I think it'll be stable for a while, only because my sense would be that Canadians are going to feel like very clear this is a mandate. It's a minority mandate, yes, but it's a mandate. And if any party were to toy with the idea of not allowing the Liberals to govern, or even if everything kind of goes sideways, basically throw things into an election again, I don't think Canadians would react very well to that at all. And I think the term balance of power is an interesting one, because I'm not sure it's the right one, only because the NDP MP was talking about balance of power. They don't have the balance of power in the sense that they can decide who has power. They can decide if they want to support the Liberals or not. They can't go make the Tories be able to form government. Neither can the Bloc. They would need both parties. So to your question, that means that the Liberals are able to kind of come in and say, and to Tom's point, basically not go into any type of agreement with either one, frankly, at least for a little while. They could maybe explore that with the NDP, but they don't necessarily have to, and they can kind of play their cards and say, look, are you really going to bring down a government that has 169 seats, that nobody wants an election? Clearly, and they'll probably argue the other parties have been in disarray, the leader doesn't even have a seat, all that kind of stuff, or whatever the new leader or leadership race. They can go vote by vote, right? They can go vote by vote, and they can see who goes with them between case by case, and that's most likely what they'll do for the next little while, if I were to guess.
Yeah, we'll know fairly soon. Parliament's supposed to come back in a month. We'll see, maybe earlier. Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much to our front bench, Brian Glant, Lisa Raitt, Tom Mulcair, and Rob Benzie. We're going to take a quick commercial break, more Power Play after that break. Welcome back to Power Play. We wanted to take a deeper dive into some of the top line numbers and some of the surprises that happened over the course of this election. The Liberals, remember, 169 seats, the Conservatives, 144, the Bloc and the NDP and the Greens all losing seats throughout the night, resulting in a lower seat count for all 3 parties at the end of the night and the end of the final count. Our Colton Prail is here to break down some of the stuff that you may have missed, but that will change the dynamics of that building behind us. Colton, good to see you. I'll start off with the NDP, because they lost party status, they lost their leader, but they lost a lot of really familiar New Democrats and MPs who had been around for a while.
They did. I mean, Peter Julian is a great example, the House leader losing by 3.5%. I mean, this was the story for the NDP in BC of one, vote splitting between themselves and the Liberals, and then losing out to the Conservatives on Vancouver Island. You look at ridings like the Nanaimo, Ladysmith, North Island, Pallet River. In both cases, Conservatives winning that by about 5,000 votes in each one, where they were presumably going to finish third because of the popularity of the Liberal and NDP candidates. But you also see the way that the NDP disruption has shaken up across the country. In the West Coast, it was primarily Liberal candidates who were filling in. Mark Carney picked up 5 BC NDP seats that Trudeau never grabbed over his 3 terms. But then in Ontario, it's a very different story. It's the 905, but it's also Northern Ontario. It's Windsor, both of those Windsor seats going to the Conservatives. The Northern Ontario seat going to the Conservatives as well, and then the 905 changes as well. It's reflective of a larger pattern in the type of voter that is splitting from the NDP. We saw more affluent NDP, more urban NDP ridings going Liberal, but that working class, those union voters, we saw the support that Poilievre had throughout the entirety of the campaign. Those were big gains for the Conservatives, and they're the kind of gains that also stick around. And that's a big challenge for the party.
Yeah, the results in Ontario were actually like Nanos, Nick Nanos had one of the tightest races in the popular vote in that province. And I remember a lot of people saying, really? Like, it seems like they're way out ahead. But he ended up being pretty reflective of ultimately what happened, thanks to the GTA, the 905, those areas. Some names there also that we were familiar with.
Yes, multiple ministers.
Yeah,
Kamal Kara lost by less than 1,000 votes in Brampton. Obviously, Yara Sachs lost by 6,000 votes, a much bigger percentage. Francesco Sorbara, 20% back in his riding. The changes we saw in the 905 specifically in York Region, in Brampton, in Hamilton. I mean, these are incredibly significant. And if I'm the Liberal Party, yes, you can look at the comeback and just how strong you were, but those are the kinds of ridings that require a little introspection. And where did you misstep? What went wrong with that working class vote?
In the other sort of part that would make Quebec so necessary is basically what you said in a way, insofar as like if they didn't get what they got in Quebec, we might not be having the same conversation tonight.
Well, there was such a focus on Quebec. There was such a focus on BC. And in large part, you made the gains that you were trying to make in those two provinces. But it's the failure in Ontario. It's the surprise in the 905 and the Golden Horseshoe, the inability to convert at a level that you looked expected to even a week prior to the election that's costing them a majority government. It is ultimately down to those ridings. I was looking through, Carney lost 11 ridings that Justin Trudeau won every term he was in. The vast majority of those are in the 905.
That's fascinating. Colton, thanks so much for that analysis. I appreciate it. That's our Colton Prail. Once again, to recap, just finalized by Elections Canada literally this afternoon, the Liberals with a strong minority government at 169 seats, just 3 seats shy of the 172 seats they needed to form a majority government. 144 seats for the Conservatives. The Bloc saw a decrease in Quebec at the expense of the Liberals, helping the Liberals reach that number of 169. They settled in at 23 seats. The NDP losing official party status and their leader's seat in Burnaby Central, resulting in just 7 seats in the House of Commons. And the Greens' Elizabeth May will be back, perhaps as Speaker. I'll leave Power Play there. I'm Vashti Capellos. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful rest of your evening.